partition, 2, 3, and 4 are still within the cluster, but they have not been formatted. They have no NTFS partition, hence they cannot be used for core. Click Finish. And we go to Manage a Cluster, the cluster that we have just created, GM Hyper-V2. And there we go. So the cluster in question has got 2 nodes, a network, and as for storage, it's got 4 disks, of which one is acting as the witness disk, and it's our volume queue. The other ones haven't got volumes for now. The cluster has got no services of applications because we haven't installed anything yet on top, but it's running on an Hyper-V machine as we configured it like that beforehand. So note that in this case, for this particular demo, I am using one network connection for everything, private, public, and iSCSI. This is definitely not recommended. It's sufficient for demo purposes, but definitely not recommended. You want to have a dedicated network for public access, a dedicated network for cluster heartbeat, and if you're using iSCSI, a dedicated storage network for the iSCSI device. The next step in our Hyper-V2 failover cluster setup for live migration is to enable the cluster share volumes, the new feature that lets all the VHD files reside on a single cluster volume and does memory status transfer over the network. So in order to do that, just right click on the name of the cluster and click on Enable Cluster Share Volume. Now, this is a beta feature. You click once, it's enabled on both nodes of the cluster, and it's supported only for the Hyper-V role. It's not designed for anything else. Any user or application data will be stored under the C cluster storage directory on every node. So mount points will actually be visible in the C cluster storage directory. And you're advised not to store anything but files that are created by the Hyper-V role. So click on Accept and OK. And that's pretty much it. The cluster share volumes will be enabled there. So note now a little quirkiness in this beta. For the cluster to mount a particular disk as a cluster share volume, you need to assign it a drive letter first. So you need to create a partition and assign a drive letter. That drive letter is not necessarily going to be used because all we're going to do is mount that cluster share volume in C cluster storage and the subdirectory there. So we do a change drive letter and path and assign a drive letter that we like. I've assigned F for the time being. Then you go back to the cluster share volume in the failover cluster manager, right click on cluster share volume, add storage, and select cluster disk 2, which happens to be my volume F. Okay, and I'm adding it there. So now cluster disk 2, my volume F, is also visible as C cluster storage volume 1. And if I go back to my server manager, click on disk 2 here, I can see that there is no letter assigned to it anymore, just a mount point. Okay, now I will go ahead and format the other 2 disks as normal cluster volumes. So we use the share nothing paradigm in this case. And as you can see, the letter F has been given back to the operating system. I will call this one, for instance, S. Call it quick one. Finished. And this other one I will call T. Quick 2. Next. And finish. And then we let them format. So at the end of my cluster configuration, here I have a GM Hyper-V 2 cluster that's made of two hosts, GM host 1 and GM host 2, and it's got a quorum volume Q, two normal cluster disk S and T, and one cluster share volume, which used to be my disk F and now sits in cluster storage volume 1. So now the next step is going to be to configure a highly available virtual machine, which will be in the next part of this webcast.